What's up everyone, it's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. 2022, we are back with the car channel with Master Sensei Nima, and we are going over the fastest, in quotation marks, street S3 ever made. This is Nima's baby, and I basically came to him with this car at a Stage 3 Plus by APR, had a blown motor. He rebuilt it to 650 horsepower. I blew it up going 120 miles an hour down the highway, and then I'm just like, make this shit insane. And here we are about a year and a half later, and this build is coming to a close, and I'm gonna let Nima go over it because in my opinion, once this build is done, I feel like the Golf R community, the S3 community, is gonna be one of the most popular car, builds to do, because I'll just let Nima explain it, because you get a DSG and you basically can make as much power as you want, and the maintenance compared to an RS3 is nothing. So Nima, what was your thought process when the car blew up to where it is now, I guess?
So basically, I just took everything I know from building high performance engines on other vehicles and applied to Gen 3 platform. So we have, typical Audi Volkswagen iron block aluminum head platform. This is just a mock-up engine as we're doing some piping and tubing to finalize fitment of things. But the Gen 3 motors are great. We do a very, very, very severe head port on these things. Open up quite a bit on the intake and the exhaust. We gotta be careful on the exhaust side since the coolant passages do run through the exhaust port. Then we slap some valves in there, some high seat pressure valve springs, some nice rods that are custom spec for these, and some custom JE pistons. Cut the crank a little bit, lighten it up, slap it back together. So we got a G3900 that's going on Ryan's build. This has the 101 AR housing, so it should be good for about 850 horse on this turbo to the crank. We're gonna take this, we're going to mount it basically right here. We have a lot of the piping and such done. Moving the brake booster and reservoir. Beauty of this is it can be mounted directly to the head on this vehicle, which is beautiful. So for you Golf R guys and S3 guys, you don't want to go with a side mount turbo because there's a lot of things that are required. You can run the same turbo in a much more manageable package. So custom intercooler setup, custom charge piping, methanol, all the goods.
Go into how this is going to trickle down into how people tune cars moving forward, because I mean, this build was expensive per se, but when you compare it to how much power you're getting out of it with the type of transmission.
Oh yeah, horsepower to cost ratio on this thing is insane. When you're looking at 800, when you're looking at even a built motor on an RS3, you're talking $15,000. That's just what you start at. That's good. It's good for 1,500 horse. This engine obviously isn't going to make 1,500 horse. This will make somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 or 900, which is great. That's more than what we want. Plenty for a lightweight car like this. No, it's not as fast as an RS3 for all the guys that are going to say, well, it's still not faster than an RS3, but it is reliable-ish for a heavily built and tuned car, and it's a lot of fun. It doesn't kill your pocketbook. Honestly, for the price of the RS3 engine build, you can almost get into this whole package.
Let's say something does go wrong because, big horsepower car goes boom.
So say tomorrow you throw a rod through the side of the block. The hard part's going to be finding a block because people are starting to realize the potential of these. Once you find one, you can build your engine for $6,000, $7,000 tops, and that's having it machined properly, O-ringed head, cut the valve seats, cut the chamber, that's all that stuff. I mean, $6-7 grand. These things aren't very expensive. Parts are not expensive for these, and it's just knowing what parts you want to run and what coatings you want to run on some of the parts is the key. So on the DQ 250 that this car comes with, we know for this build it's not going to hold up very well. The obvious swap is to put the RS3 transmission on here, DQ 500, which is what this car will be getting. The DQ 250, we could find that it holds up to about, it's 550, 600 newton meters, foot-pounds of torque, I'm sorry, not newton meters. With a tune and clutch packs in it, safely, reliably. Obviously, you're not going to be wanting to launch that transmission too often. This car's going to be making a little bit more torque than that, and I'm sure Ryan will love to launch the car a few times. So we'll see how long it holds up. We will let you guys know how long the DQ250 does last.
Bets. I'm guessing 2 weeks.
Yes, we're going to throw it on. I'm going to say it doesn't even make it off the hub dyno. It's going to be on my dyno and brake, so it'll be fine.
And you already did a manual one, right? How long that manual?
Manual lasted a little while. The guy definitely could have driven it a little bit better when it took it apart. But the manual one has gone about 6 months now without any hiccups. We did have to prematurely swap a clutch, but that was user error.
Let's go into like, because I assume someone would do this type of build to do like actual drags. You know, like this is like the drag car that's going to get constantly rebuilt. What do you expect this to do times wise?
These are going to be 9-second cars, and if we got this thing out and took all the necessary stuff, we could get it down into the 8s. Not with this turbo. I would go with a slightly different. This is more of a streetable turbo because this is a street car still. But the turbos that we can do a G35 or even a G40 on this thing if we want to build a pure drag car and just, you know, you're going to be rebuilding the engine every year. But $6,000, $7,000 a year to hurt a lot of feelings.
Like to me, when I look on YouTube, it's like RS3, 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 or it's the VR6 engine before. This engine was already like always skipped over. Why is that? And then why do you see this emergence? Because anyone can get into a Golf R and GTI and get to this power pretty quickly.
I think the big thing was that this engine only came out for the Audis in 2015. So this 2015 was the first year you get a Gen 3 engine. Still fairly new. Not a lot of them with a whole bunch of miles that people are rebuilding them. I've just been lucky. I have people like Ryan who just like to blow things up so I could get into this kind of stuff. And I have 6 or 7 others that are driving around currently at the 600-700 horsepower mark. It's just, I think we're getting to the point now that they are getting 100,000 miles. You're seeing 100,000 mile Golf Rs pop up. And at that point, I'm noticing cylinder 2s go bad if they're tuned. I'm noticing rod bearings go bad. Those are the kind of common failures I'm finding. And when that happens, you either swap another engine in or you can rebuild them. And if they find someone who's not trying to rip them off, you can get an engine built for fairly cheap on these because there's not a lot to them. I started this game whenever the B Series Honda was still under warranty. Like I've been doing this for a long time, and this is like the new Honda Civic in my opinion. The GTI, Golf R. It's so cost effective to build. There's so many of them out there, and they're good cars. They are an overall good car, and you can do stuff like this and be comfortable with it. So.
Go in a quick price sheet of getting this car to, let's say, 800 and RS3. I know you already touched on the built motor alone, but like package-wise, if I came to you with the RS3 and the S3, what would be, you know, obviously rough ballpark. People like when you talk about money on YouTube, so right. Throwing out actual money.
Yeah, so I actually, I can just tell you our last RS3 build, that one had a 850 hybrid turbo on there. That car, you know, we're going to talk about crank horsepower. We're not going to talk about wheel.
Right.
Crank horsepower made, you know, like it was 817, I think it dynoed at. That car came out to right about $23,000 for everything. That was built engine, turbo kit, installed, put back in, broken in, tuned, all that fun stuff. That does not include the transmission. We're not going to include transmission. We're just going to talk about the 4-cylinder EA 888 Gen 3 versus
because I'm thinking like people are going to rebuild these to drag eventually.
Yeah. So you know you're in the low 20s. That's for a shop to do. Obviously, you do it yourself, it's going to be a little bit less, but I mean, there's a lot of specialized tooling to do it yourself. Now, for the Gen 3 engine, you're going to have about $6,000 in the engine and about $500 in the turbo kit, all in.
So you can see like,
and then you have a little bit of labor on top of that for taking an engine in and out. So you know you're under $15,000 to do that. Now that doesn't include fueling or tuning and that sort of stuff. We're talking about building your engine, getting the turbo kit, putting it in, and then you'll have to obviously purchase fueling like with this car. He's got some giant port injectors, and then we have giant in-tank brushless fuel pump, and then a custom ECU tune. So, you know, both cars will need that stuff. That's apples to apples there. But when we're talking this here in particular, that's where the costs are really different. So,
What would you like if a buyer was like, I'm gonna mod my car, but like they have the option to get into like a Golf R S3, or they could spend the money getting an RS3, but then have less money to mod. Which way would you advise them and why?
So it depends on what their power goal was. So if they're just aiming for, you know, a 500 or 600 horsepower car, I would probably go with the RS3 just because it's so easy to get that power. Stage 2, you're pretty much there. But if they want some real power, I would definitely go with the Golf R because they're going to be ahead of the game. And the RS3 is going to break. It's just these cars break. They all break. No matter how good they are, in a year or 2 years, you're going to have some stupid little thing go wrong. For whatever reason, it's just a car. Even if it was stock, you'd probably have issues. So
Awesome. Well, this is the Grandmaster build. I wanted to showcase it because I do feel like you said there is one car on YouTube that's pushing this power?
Yes.
I know in the UK there are a couple.
There's a couple cars. There's Arnold from Padge Parts. He actually has 2 or 3 cars, but they're ones in like Mexico and all that he's built engines for. There are a couple other cars that are pushing this, and then there's this guy who made a full drag race one, which he actually gave me the idea for, full disclosure, of the side mount turbo, but he didn't even have a radiator. So
No
he didn't have anything. It's a drag car. It was all fiberglass. But yeah, this will be a street car that he's going to daily. So that's the big thing.
So be sure to subscribe to follow the build. We will obviously tell you when this transmission breaks.
Oh, it's going to be great.
It's going to explode. And then we are going to turn it up even more with the RS3 transmission after that. But I did want to, like, when it's still dead, you know, let Nima lay out the build and lay out the reasonings on, because I just see RS3s all over YouTube, right? I think that the Golf R in the next coming years, as the Golf Rs get even cheaper and they're getting to the level of like a Subaru STI to mod, that you're gonna see that everyone can get to 700, 800 horsepower pretty cheaply. And if shit does go wrong, you know, it's not 15 grand to rebuild a RS3 engine. It's only like, I think Nima charged me $7,000, and he did custom pistons and rods and everything, all custom port work. So I definitely think this is going to be, as Nima stated, you know, the next Civic, where you see this car really come to shine because of the DSG. Because I feel like the DSG makes it feel like more like a high-end supercar with the instant shifting versus, you know, a more traditional automatic with a torque converter. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and please check out Octane Fab at Octane Fab. He will be in the description below.